and welcome. Today I have a couple art cards for you. I make them basically the same, different colors. I'm going to give one to a friend. So I start with some 3x4-inch Bristol smooth paper, and I'm using this Tim Holtz stencil. I'll have all the particulars in the description, the products I use, the links to digital files. Check the description out for all that. The first one is going to be kitsch flamingo, worn lipstick, and lumberjack plaid. So I'm just going to kind of feather down those colors, and I'm going to be adding some clear embossing powder just to kind of give them a little bit of a shine. I use all, well, I can't say that until the next card, but on this card I'm using all just regular inks, but that's not true because my lumberjack plaid is an oxide. You just want to be careful. The reason I'm saying is because you want to be careful not to mix your inks. You don't want to get oxide into your regular inks because that can turn them oxide. That is my understanding. So before I move on to the second one, I'm going to go ahead and add my clear embossing just because I want good coverage and I want to do that while it's wet. Embossing powder will adhere to anything wet. You just want to make sure that it's not going to dry before you can emboss it. So that's why I'm going to do it quickly and emboss it quickly, so if I came back to it, it could just blow away. So right now it kind of looks Valentine's-y, but it won't when I'm done. For the other one, I'm going to use old paper and seedless preserves, and then the lumberjack plaid again. This one will look a little different because I'm also going to be using old paper to cover the white. So, but I actually end up liking the purple one better, which I'm not a big purple fan. So just kind of feathering them, not really creating a line or of such. Some of them overlap. And then lumberjack plaid on the bottom. And then the same thing with the clear embossing powder. The clear embossing powder will act as a resist, so anything that I put on top of it, it won't stick to, it can lay on top of, but it will not stick to the embossing powder. So you can just take, I usually take a paper towel or a dry baby wipe and just remove anything sitting on top of the embossing powder. Unless I like it there, I mean, it could rub off by handling, but so again, before this could dry, I'm going to emboss it. And I'm going to cover the backgrounds initially with old paper. It's going to get vintage photo, rusty hinge, and a little bit of scorched timber on the edge, just to kind of give it kind of a vintage feel. I'm not really a cutesy, I don't like cutesy things, so this could have gone that way had I not wanted to make it look vintage. If you like cutesy, then you don't need to do the dark. You could keep it white. You could use something lighter like antique linen or something, and not do all the grunging that I'm going to do. So this is vintage photo. And I second guessed myself with the rusty hinge, but actually I really like what it did. It kind of, I don't think I would have liked rusty hinge by itself, but it really warmed it up. I think because orange goes well with pink, that it just really made a big difference. And then the scorched timber is just going on the edges. Now I'm going to do the same things on this one. I'm going to start with old paper. And you might wonder why, because the very top was also old paper. But I'm going to be adding, again, the vintage photo and the rusty hinge. So that'll take some of the same colorness away. So it'll accent the original old paper embossing. So vintage photo. See, now you're kind of seeing that old paper come out. Rusty hinge. And I'm not going in as far on the rusty hinge as I did the vintage photo. And then just a little bit of scorched timber. I'm going to add a little bit of stamping, and again, I'm going to be doing it on top of some embossing, but I'm going to take a dried baby wipe and wiping off anything sitting on top of the embossing so it will look like the stamp was behind it. I think I stamped a little too high on the purple one. I wish I would have got it lower like I did the other one, but that's okay. And then I have another one that's going to go at the very top. Both of these stamps are Stampers Anonymous Tim Holtz from the Etcetera stamp collection. And I'm going to be wiping off any ink that got on top of the embossing. I was using Archival Ink graphite there, and so Archival Ink, you can do that if you do it quickly. If you use something like Stays-On ink, which I love in some instances, but that's such a fast dryer, I can't guarantee you it's going to wipe off even the embossing, even though it's a resist, because it sticks to just about anything. Now, I am so wanting to show you what I'm using there. I spilled it all over my card, all over my hands. I'm like, oh no. This is Spritz, and this is in the color Picked Raspberry, and I made such a mess. But you know, I always say perfection is not what I'm looking for. So I went on, and I'm using seedless preserves on the other one. And I dried a little bit, but it's got some pretty big spots on it, so I do end up coming in with a paper towel and rolling off any excess. The part on the top, there's nothing I can do about that. I guess I probably could have come back with some vintage photo and tried to cover it up a little bit. I didn't do that, but that might have been a good idea. And there, I'm rolling off any excess. I'm gonna add some vintage photo to the edges of my florals. I've had these florals for a while, and I've been trying to figure out how to use them, and then when I did this one, I thought it's perfect for those flowers. They're kind of that stencil, the way I used it, and these flowers are all kind of do I want to say bohemian? I don't know, they just look like they would go well together. So I'm about ready to start gluing. Not really going to use a lot of things on top. I've got these flowers, and then I'm going to use just a strip of scrap paper. So very little in the way of digital downloads or ephemera. I wanted to be able to see the embossing. And I'm glad these flowers have long stems because I can have them sit above everything and still see the stencil. So I really debated on what to put down below. I didn't really want to put a bunch of digital downloads, and so I thought about one of Tim Holtz paper strips and went digging in that bin, but I found I do something in my Etsy shop which leaves me some strips for scrap paper. So this is decorative cardstock, and it's just a little edge of one, and so I thought I'm just going to use that as just a little piece to go down on the bottom. I put some vintage photo around the edges, and I'm going to be using something I don't use very often. I often forget I have it. But I'm going to be using Tim Holtz Tiny Attacher. It'd be something for your Christmas list, but I need to start using it more. But it's tiny staples because I thought about doing eyelets, and I thought that's just going to be too much doing eyelets, so I was just going to leave it glued on there. But then I remembered my tiny attacher and thought, oh, that will be perfect. So if you're not familiar with the tiny attacher, you'll get to see it. Could you use regular staples? Absolutely. So here's a tiny attacher, and it's just going to give a little staple. And that's it. If you haven't subscribed yet, I invite you to do so. If you like this piece, give me a thumbs up or a comment. I do have some final pictures, so stay tuned for those. Other than that, I hope you have an awesome day, and I'll see you next time.